This section is full. You're not on the list. Get out. The young security guard's voice was sharp, edged with the cheap authority of a new uniform. It sliced through the excited hum of the auditorium. The squeak of plastic chairs, the faint, cloying smell of popcorn from the lobby, it all seemed to fade. Elijah Eli Bishop did not move. His hands, knuckles scarred from a life of labor and discipline, rested calmly on his knees. His Marine Corps dress blues, with their perfect creases and gleaming buttons, were an island of impeccable order in a sea of celebratory chaos. Inside, Eli wasn't angry. He felt his training kick in, an instinct honed over decades. His breathing deepened, slowing. Combat breathing. 4 in, hold for 4, 6 out. His heart rate, which would have skyrocketed for anyone else, slowed to a steady, rhythmic beat, obeying an internal command. He assessed the guard not as a person, but as a situation, an unforeseen obstacle, a threat not to his body, but to the honor of the uniform and the sanctity of the moment he was there to witness. Eli's calm was a lit match to the guard's insecurity. He stepped closer, invading his personal space, his chest puffed out slightly. "Look, man," he said, his voice dropping into a phony, confidential tone, "maybe you'd be more comfortable in the back bleachers." The insult was there, veiled and venomous, wrapped in a fake concern. The air grew thick. The tension was a physical thing. A man in a suit seated behind them huffed loudly, his face a mask of annoyance, not at the injustice, but at the disturbance. The guard saw a middle-aged black man in a uniform. He didn't see the gunny. He couldn't possibly understand that this man's silence wasn't emptiness, but a space forged in the dust and fire of Kandahar, in a moment that defined the very meaning of the word brother. To understand Elijah's honor, we have to go back. But before we drop into the hell of that ambush, let's connect right here. Tell us in the comments what city or state you're watching from. We love seeing our community stretch from coast to coast. And if this scene already has you fired up, hit that like button. It takes you a second, but it means the world to us. Thank you. And now, the journey begins. At dawn that day, Eli hadn't just gotten ready for a ceremony. He'd prepared for inspection. In the quiet of his home, he'd spent a full hour on his boots. It wasn't vanity. It was a ritual. The circular motion of the brush, the chemical scent of the polish, the way the dull leather slowly transformed into a deep, black mirror. It was a meditation, a way to order his thoughts and pay respect to the cloth of his nation. A gunny never shows up looking anything less than perfect. Never. Later, behind the wheel of his old Dodge Charger, he paused before starting the engine. The car was a sanctuary. The passenger seat, worn leather, still held the faint impression of where his wife, Sarah, always sat. A tiny crack spiderwebbed across the dashboard, something he'd never fixed. She'd made it years ago, laughing, trying to jam a too large Christmas present for Marcus inside. He smiled every time he saw it. From the glove compartment, he pulled out a photograph. The edges were soft with time. It was from a faded 4th of July picnic, long ago. He was in civvies, a rare t-shirt and jeans, looking younger, more relaxed. Sarah was beside him, in a sundress, laughing at him. He remembered her exact words. "Eli Bishop, even when you're trying to relax, you look like a general inspecting the troops." She had kissed him then, and their whole world was in that kiss. He placed the photo back with infinite care. Today wasn't just for Marcus's graduation. It was for Sarah. It was about honoring a lifetime of promises. To understand why the guard's petty offense felt as light as water to him, we have to go to a place where offenses were bullets, and silence was the only armor. Years earlier. Afghanistan. A godforsaken valley. The boredom was an enemy as real as the heat. Hours spent staring at rocks and dust, sweat gluing your uniform to your skin, flies buzzing with suicidal persistence. The tension was a constant, low hum beneath the silence. A young Marine, a nervous private named Peterson, couldn't stop fidgeting. "God, Gunny, this quiet is driving me crazy," he'd whispered. Eli, without taking his eyes off the binoculars, had replied calmly. "Get used to it, kid. It's the noise you should be afraid of." Then, the noise came. It wasn't a boom. It was a tear in the fabric of reality. A fist of compressed air that slammed into your chest and stole your breath, followed by a deafening explosion that shook the very ground. The lead Humvee was engulfed in a ball of fire and black smoke, tossed into the air like a toy. All hell broke loose. A ringing in the ears, the acrid dust choking you, blinding you, the metallic taste of blood in your mouth. Then, the angry chatter of Kalashnikovs. From all sides. A complex, perfectly executed ambush. Eli, flat on the ground, saw him. Cole Aces Warren, the young Navy SEAL on their joint mission, was trapped behind the burning wreck. His leg was a ruin of blood and bone. He was exposed. A sitting duck. The commander's voice crackled over the radio, raw with adrenaline. Fall back. Fall back. We can't get to Warren. Leave him. That's an order. Leave him. An order? The cold, brutal logic of warfare. Sacrifice one to save the squad. But Eli, looking at the sheer terror in the eyes of a kid not yet 25, saw a different logic. An older one. Cover me. He roared to his men. Ignoring the order, he laid down a burst of suppressive fire. Then he yelled, his gunnery sergeant's voice cutting through the chaos, a command that wasn't a hope, but a rewriting of reality itself. Get up, Warren. We're not dying here. He ran. A 200-yard sprint through hell. Sharp rocks tore at his uniform. Dust made the ground slick. He reached Cole, grabbed him, and began to drag. It was a dance with death. One step. Fire. Drag. The zip of a round passed his ear. He hit the dirt. An explosion shook the earth. He got up. Dragged again. His lungs burned. His muscles screamed. But his mind was ice. He threw a smoke grenade to cover their retreat. In the artificial fog, he heaved Cole onto his shoulders. He couldn't fire anymore. He could only run. A zigzagging, stumbling, falling, rising run, as sniper rounds hunted him and the smoke and mortars chased his footsteps. He could feel Cole's warm blood soaking his back, feel his friend's breathing grow weaker. And in that desperate, chaotic sprint, he found his calm. Because in that moment, a promise screamed into the wind became louder than any order. You're my brother. And I'm bringing you home. When he finally staggered into the relative safety of the fallback trench, he collapsed, more dead than alive, Cole's body on top of him. His men dragged them both in, while Eli, with his last ounce of strength, kept his rifle pointed downrange. That night, Elijah Bishop disobeyed an order to obey an older law. And he brought his brother home. And now, in the auditorium, the young guard, ignorant of all this, was about to make the biggest mistake of his life. He reached out a hand to grab Eli's arm. All right, are we gonna move or not? The listener, who now knew this man's secret, held their breath. Don't do it. You have no idea who you're dealing with. In that precise instant, the moment before contact, everything changed. A calm, deep voice, edged with the authority of a razor, cut through the quiet. Is there a problem with my gunny? The guard spun around. Standing a few feet away was Cole Aces Warren. His leg was scarred, but he stood with the posture of a predator. As the guard stammered, his brain failing to process, another man stood up. Then another. The action spread like a silent wave. One by one, 5 other men rose to their feet. 6 Navy SEALs in civilian clothes, a human mountain range, silent and immovable. Their collective presence filled the space with a weight that arrogance could not withstand. The guard turned pale. He looked to his older partner for help, but the man just shook his head, a look that said, "Let it go, kid. This isn't a fight you can win." It was Cole's voice that broke the silence again. Calm, quiet, but heavy as a tombstone. "I asked you a question." The guard's arrogance finally shattered. He mumbled something incomprehensible, pulling his hand back as if he'd been burned. From the stage, a dean who had been watching the scene with growing alarm, quickly intervened. With a sharp gesture, he called over the guards. He exchanged a few hushed words, and they retreated, their heads down, humiliation burning on their cheeks. On the stage, Marcus had seen it all. The anxiety for his father had morphed into helpless anger, then into stunned disbelief. He didn't understand what was happening, but he felt its monumental importance. Then, the announcer's voice brought order back to the room. And now, receiving his degree in mechanical engineering, Marcus Bishop. Applause broke out. But it was almost immediately drowned out by a different sound. The 6 Navy SEALs, still standing, snapped to attention. It wasn't a chaotic movement. It was a single, unified, percussive sound. A gesture of such profound military respect that a hush fell over the entire hall. And as they stood at attention, none of them were looking at the stage. None of them were looking at Marcus. All 6 of them, their eyes as cold as gunmetal, were locked on a single target, the young security guard, who now, under the weight of their gaze, seemed to shrink, wishing the floor would swallow him whole. And in that moment, Marcus understood. It wasn't just solidarity. It was a ritual. An honor bestowed upon his father. And a silent judgment passed on the one who had dared disrespect him. And for the first time in his life, he understood the true, legendary stature of the man he called Dad. In the parking lot, after the ceremony, Marcus found his father leaning against the old Charger, as calm as if nothing had happened. He hugged him, a hug that tried to convey 1,000 questions and a bottomless admiration. Dad? Who were those guys? Eli watched his brothers in the distance, who gave him a single, sharp nod before disappearing. They're just old friends, Marcus. Then he put a heavy hand on his son's shoulder. Son, remember this, they can't take your honor unless you give it to them. And you don't have to raise your voice when you know your own worth. Elijah's story isn't just about a Marine at a graduation. It's about how honor, dignity, and calm are the most powerful weapons against arrogance and prejudice. It's proof that true strength doesn't need to shout to be heard. And now, we want to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation where you were judged unfairly? Or have you ever seen someone stand up for another's honor in such a powerful way? Share your story in the comments. We read every single one. If this story moved you, the best way to support us is to leave a like and share it with someone who, like Eli, embodies true, quiet strength. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next journey into stories that remind us who we are. Thank you for making it to the end. Your support is our strength. And remember, sometimes, the most powerful response is silence.